Te la duro! 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 Capra ignorante!
Hello guys and welcome back to the 31st episode of Italian Politician of the Week. I am Ipernick and I make weekly videos on Italian history and politics in English. Today we are talking about Giuseppe Conte, former Prime Minister and Professor of Private Law from the Five-Star Movement. About a year ago, Conte was at the peak of his popularity. Plenty of memes, books and newspaper articles talked about his latest updates on Facebook, his decrees, his ministers and his handling of the historical events that are still unfolding to this day. A lot has changed in 1 year, and pretty quickly too. It feels like yesterday when I was making a video about teenage girls getting wet over Conte going to the beach and shit. However, when you put the wacky memes aside, Conte becomes a controversial figure who can also be perceived as a villain in many ways. And just like the best villains, he has a fascinating origin story. So sit down, relax, grab the first thing you find under the sink, and let's get started with the history of Giuseppe Conte. Conte was born in 1964 in a small town near Foggia. He graduated in law in the 80s and specialized in private law. He became a law professor at the University of Florence in the 2000s, where he met Alfonso Bonafede, who worked for him as an assistant. Bonafede is a recurring character on my channel because I make fun of him all the time, but it is all thanks to him if Conte ever got into politics in the first place. In early 2018, Bonafede introduced Conte to Luigi Di Maio, the party secretary of the Five-Star Movement. Di Maio never graduated from high school and so he was impressed by Conte for his gentlemanly manners, his grammar and knowledge of state law, traits completely alien to him. Therefore, Di Maio chose him to be Minister of Public Administration in the eventuality that the Five-Star Movement won the 2018 election. When the day came, the Five-Star Movement had basically won, hence becoming Italy's biggest party. Despite this, they didn't have enough members of parliament to win single-handedly a vote of confidence, so they had no choice but to work together with somebody else. The party they chose for their group project was Lega, led by Matteo Salvini. President Mattarella played a huge role in solving this and the next few parliamentary crises, but I'm going to save the tea for next February, when I intend to make an episode all about his term in office for the Italian President series. Like the video if you would like to see that happen. Really, the only thing Salvini and Di Maio had in common was their populism and inexperience, not much else. But at the time it seemed the only compatible match for a proper cabinet. All was left for Salvini and Di Maio was to find some figurehead to send to Mattarella so that a cabinet could be made in a way where they could run the country behind the scenes. After much consideration, Giuseppe Conte was chosen by both leaders. Mattarella approved their choice soon after. He was probably reassured to see a law professor among the functional illiterates. After the President of the Republic gave Conte the thumbs up, Di Maio and Salvini formed the government which Conte will lead in the following year. Conte's first cabinet is probably one of the wackiest in Italian modern history. I already talked about it in a previous video that I will link above, but if you would like a more in-depth analysis of each minister, be sure to like the video and comment down below. Conte in his first phase between 2018 and 2019 didn't really govern that much. In fact, it was Di Maio and Salvini who monopolized the power at the beginning. They take credit for some of the most awful initiatives ever taken in Italian history, such as the citizen income or reddito di cittadinanza, where the state pays you to look for a job. However, there is no incentive in finding it, so people never really bothered. Another great achievement were the Salvini decrees that made Italy not follow international deals in regards to immigration and contributed to many people drowning while trying to get here. Sure, illegally, but they don't deserve to die. Conte's first and second cabinet also had a tendency to just give free shit away in the form of bonuses, babysitter bonus, vacation bonus, scooter bonus, and pet bonus, just to name a few. I made one up, so have fun guessing which one. In August 2019, however, things had reached a breaking point, and Salvini proposed a motion of no confidence against the Five-Star Movement in order to kick them out of the cabinet and bring Forza Italia and Fratelli d'Italia in instead. However, this motion boomeranged because the Democratic Party came in and sided with the Five-Star Movement, hence stopping the right-wing coalition from making the cabinet fall. Conte, once he realized that his position was at stake, grew a spine and resigned from his position in order to open negotiations with the Democratic Party, with whom he made a center-left government in the late summer 2019 alongside Italia Viva, Renzi's party. Conte's initiative earned him a lot of respect among the ranks of the Five-Star Movement, who began to see him as an actual role model and not just a figurehead of Di Maio, who will actually resign from secretary of the party sometime later. Conte's second cabinet was a lot more balanced and the ministers a lot more competent, at least in comparison to what came before, though there were still plenty to criticize, especially when in February 2020 the government called for a state of emergency due to the historical events we are currently facing. Before I say more, let's have a look at his political compass. Giuseppe Conte is a left-wing centrist, kind of like a Christian Democrat. He strongly believes in the principles of transparency and is a strong advocate for an increase of public participation in institutional decisions. For that reason, he often hosted live streams on multiple platforms where he directly talked with the Italian people to give them words of hope and updates on what is going to happen and on the lockdown. While this worked wonders for his image and popularity, things quickly deteriorated over the summer after the Italian welfare started performing way worse than in other countries. Minister of Healthcare Roberto Speranza and Minister of Internal Affairs Luciana Lamorghese were and still are criticized for being too wary and for enforcing anti-infection laws that do not make any sense. An example off the top of my head is when they stopped many businesses such as restaurants, shops and gyms from opening despite the fact that they had become equipped with hand sanitizer and had reorganized their furniture in a way that the customers could respect social distances. Another big problem were public schools. Minister Lucia Azzolina is often made fun of for buying desks with wheels instead of hiring new personnel for the students that had suffered a drop in quality of their education due to the pandemic. On another note, the Minister of Infrastructure De Michelis, in order to fight the problem of overcrowded buses, she reduced the number of them in circulation in order to indirectly encourage people to walk, bike or get their cars or something to go to work. What she didn't consider is that nobody did that, and so buses became even more crowded. The worst part, however, has to be our former Commissioner of COVID Emergency Domenico Arcuri, who never seemed to take a break in screwing things around and giving wrong directions to the ministers on what they should consider. While I don't think Conte is directly responsible for all these decisions, I'm sure he did formally agree to every single one. That's because in Italy we have this thing called ministerial responsibility, where every single minister of a cabinet cannot openly criticize or disagree with the actions of one of his colleagues. So in a way, Conte, alongside most, if not all the ministers in the cabinet, agreed to all the bullshit that has been going on up until last February, when Draghi kicked his ass out. However, there are plenty of things to which Conte is directly responsible of. First of all, he passed too many decrees. A decree is when the cabinet passes laws without consulting the parliament. Decrees can usually be passed only on selected fields, such as administration, but during a state of emergency it gets a little vague. Today, many people accuse Conte of acting against the constitution, something that does make sense. However, when the founding fathers wrote our constitution, they couldn't predict all this bullshit, so honestly I don't see how this is relevant. What I think is much more relevant and serious is how Conte often bypassed the parliament when making very important decisions, like the lockdown but also other things, acting more like a president in a presidential republic rather than a parliamentary one. Not to mention the fact that by the end of his term he became a lot more arrogant and cocky. He often called out Salvini and Meloni for their propaganda and refused to do press conferences, instead preferring to talk to voters supporters straight away on his platforms, kind of like Trump now that I think about it. The biggest of my personal grudges is how Conte basically abandoned the private sector to its fate, leaving many small businesses to close down. Italy's economy doesn't rely on giant businesses like many countries in the West do, but on small to middle-sized ones. So this is going to be a big deal for the economy. Due to his negligence, there will be less jobs, and that's a recipe for disaster. All Conte did was to give government bonuses to families so they could afford to go on vacation, but everything else was at the expense of the privates, who will soon have no choice but to either close down or fire most, if not all, of their personnel to stay afloat. This didn't sit well with Matteo Renzi, the leader of Italia Viva, who after a long series of shenanigans and arguments took back its vote of confidence and forced Conte to resign earlier this year, right before Draghi took his place. Despite all this, Conte has a huge following that wants him to lead the five-star movement at the next election. However, I don't think it's going to be as easy as it seems. Beppe Grillo, the current spiritual leader of the five-star movement, gave birth to the party out of a sense of frustration and hope of change, which resonated with about 40% of the Italians at some point at least. However, now the party is going through a big decline, and I don't think Beppe is as mentally sound as he used to be 5 years ago. Some weeks ago, Grillo wanted Conte to become its party secretary, something that he was very happy to do. However, he doesn't want to be a figurehead anymore, but an actual bringer of change and reform to the party that lacks organization and proper principles. Grillo, however, thinks the party is perfect and told him to fuck himself, to the disappointment of many of his followers. Now, despite all the junk I say about the five-star movement, I don't want them to fall, because I feel like they represent a noble force in our democracy. It is a shame that Grillo has been losing his sanity lately, because it would be interesting to see what Conte could do with the party. After the big schism of the Draghi cabinet, the rape allegations of Grillo's son Ciro, and the failed negotiations with Conte, I'm not sure how much time left this movement will have, but I sure hope it will last a little bit longer so I can shit on them more on YouTube. As I'm writing this, it seems that they are going to reach a proper agreement sometime soon, but only time will tell. Thank you guys so much for watching. I enjoyed making this video more than others, not gonna lie. I will see you next time.